This here's the King Gator right here now. I'm going to read this here story. It's called Little Miss Chatterbox. It's written by Roger Hangover. Hangrove.
What is this, Hangrove? You messed up like the Mr. Noisy book.
Let's see. Little Miss Chatterbox talked more than a lot. She talked all the time, day in, day out, week after week, month after month, year after year, Edna Mode. She never stopped. She didn't know it, but she even talked in her sleep. Count, did you know that? Look at her there sleeping right there. She had a brother. I bet you can guess what his name was, can you? That's right, Mr. Chatterbox. He looked a bit like, she looked a bit like him, don't you think? Except he got a green hat on. You should have heard them when they got together. You couldn't get a word in edgeways or sideways or anyways.
Let's make music together.
Have you ever heard about somebody being able to talk the hind leg off a donkey? Well, Mr. Chatterbox could talk both hind legs off a donkey, and his sister could talk the hind leg off an elephant.
Or the elephant from the Dr. Seuss cartoons.
Now, the story is about the time little Miss Chatterbox decided to get herself a job, which she did in a bank in Happy Land.
I'm thinking she needed some pork and beans.
They're there in the Polkin Bank. At 10 o'clock on Monday morning, Mr. Happy strolled into Happy to lend you bank in the middle of Happy Town. He took out his checkbook, wrote a check, and went to the counter. Behind the counter, on her first morning at work, stood little Miss Chatterbox. She smiled at Mr. Happy, and Mr. Happy smiled back. Good morning, he said cheerfully. Well, little Miss Chatterbox, taking a deep breath.
What? What is she gonna say?
For the time of the year, it's a good morning, but not quite as good as the morning we had yesterday, or do I say today? So tomorrow morning will be an even better morning, but it is quite a good morning for Monday mornings. And
Why does she sound like God's?
And on until it was time for the bank to shut. Mr. Happy was standing there, and his mouth open in amazement. He'd been there for hours. And now, continue Little Miss Chatterbox, it's time for the bank to be shut down. It's time to go home and say goodbye. It was nice talking to you. And she went home, leaving poor Mr. Happy without any money. Look at him. He's so sad. And he's really supposed to be happy. He's sad. And the following morning, she was fired. She got herself another job at a restaurant, at the Eat A Lot. And the Tuesday morning and midday, Mr. Greedy walked in the restaurant and sat down as usual corner table, and he always ate there on Tuesdays because that was the day that they served extra large portions.
I reckon she needed some pork and beans.
The pork and beans. The waitress came up to take the order, and what's the soup of the day? Mr. Greedy asked the waitress. Of course, that waitress was little Miss Chatterbox. I see her right there. Well, said little Miss Chatterbox, and she was the waitress, and the soup of the day is tomato, and we'd also have the other soups on the menu, such as oxtail and vegetable and chicken noodle, and have lots of other things to start with, such as... And he went on and on and on until midnight. Mr. Greedy was still sitting there listening in amazement, and he's been there for 12 hours listening.
If she talks, she'll call the manager.
You good? Okay. Yeah. And now, continue Little Miss Chatterbox, it's time for the Eat A Lot restaurant to shut down. It's time to go home and say goodbye and talk. Nice talking to you. And she went home, leaving poor Mr. Greedy feeling rather empty.
He did not get his pork and beans like Mr. Noy.
Next morning, she was fired. And the same thing happened all week. On Tuesday morning, she was fired from her job as an assistant at a hat shop. And Miss Splendid went into the shop to buy herself a new hat. She couldn't. Oh, madam, I've just a hat for you, and I know the one you're going to love just because it's pink, and if you think it's colors right there. And it was all talk and no hat.
Pork and bean hat shop.
I see those pork and beans on that hat. Did you see it?
I don't see any pork and beans on
Look
that.
at them beans on that hat right there. On Friday, as secretary to Mr. Uppity. Mr. Uppity, incidentally, was the richest man in the world, not just in town, but in the world. And just thought you might like to know. But poor Mr. Uppity didn't make any money that day. And Miss Chatterbox was working for him. Oh no, Mr. Uppity, I've never worked for an officer before, and I'm just excited that we got a cup of tea, coffee, and as rich as you, and everybody says that you are, and it was all talk and no work.
Why does he look like a bean?
The uppity pork and bean.
What? The butt's got
had a happy ending because it was the very end of the week, and Miss Chatterbox managed to find herself a job that suited her down to the ground and up to the sky.
Well, she definitely is making music together.
That Saturday evening, Miss Chatterbox was at home, Chatterbox Cottage, which was where he lived.
Face.
Mr. Chatterbox was cross because his watch had stopped, and he had arranged to meet Little Miss Sunshine at 7 o'clock, and he had no idea what time it was. You hear me, little sprout thing?
I'm not the little sprout thing. I'm Junior Asparagus.
The telephone, the speaking clock, and found out what time it was, and he dialed the number.
I don't look like a sprout thingy. I'm Junior Asparagus.
Okay, you're asparagus sprout. And in the third stroke, it will be 25 or 15 seconds, and little Miss Chatterbox took a deep breath. Pip, pip, pip. And the third stroke, it was 6:25 and 20 seconds. Pip, pip, pip. That's funny, thought Mr. Chatterbox to himself. That sounds just like my sister.
Why does he look where he's supposed to call the butt Scott?
My sister sounds just like Edna Mode.
Count. Count, what do you think of this funny?
That was I think it's wonderfully funny.
Commercials.
Did I send this for the morning?
The Freed.